Hello and good morning friends, welcome to CEC EduSet live lecture. Dear friends, as you know that we are carrying series of lectures on development communication. In previous lecture we discussed about Western economic theory of development communication. Today we are going to discuss about Eastern economic theory of development communication, and for this we have again with us in our studios senior journalist Shri KG Dutt. Shri KG Dutt, he has almost 50 years of journalistic experience. He worked with the major newspaper dailies of the country. As well as I would like to tell you all that currently he is working as visiting faculty with the Institute of Mass Communication and Media Technology, Kurukshetra University. So first of all, I would like to welcome our guest Shri KG Dutt, and I believe that the way he used to deliver the lectures, this lecture is going to one of the most productive lectures, because the way he gives excellent examples, it helps the students, the viewers to understand the topic deeply. So welcome once again to the EduSet lecture, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
As the topic suggests, Eastern economic theory of development communication, we could say that it could be a Eastern school of thought regarding the development communication.
Yes, we will discuss today everything about the Eastern economic system, what is its derivation, what have been its implications in different economies of the world, what is its present status, and how it has helped different countries in the world to grow and achieve optimum achievement and progress. Basically, the Eastern economic system is based on the thoughts of Karl Marx. It is known as the communist theory also. Karl Marx has not stated exactly what is this theory in his book Das Kapital, but he has given some fundamental ideas to how to run the economy of a state, which should be beneficial for ordinary workers and other classes. Now, Eastern economic system has two very important postulates. One is that the economy and the resources of a state should be controlled by the state itself. There is no scope for individual investment. Two, there should be no individual profiteering, and all the resources of the state should be spent on the welfare of the labor class and other sections of society. Three, it's a controlled economy. It is not a free economy as is prevalent in Western countries. The first country in the world where this economy was applied and flourished also was Soviet Union. This theory of total control, no liberalization, no profiteering, and no freedom of speech or self-expression is the fundamental idea behind the communist regimes. The countries of then USSR, China, Czechoslovakia, Bulgaria, Cuba, North Korea, North Vietnam and other countries remained ardent followers of the Eastern economic theory. Now, when Karl Marx expressed his views on this theory or developed this theory, he thought of the labor class which was being exploited by the individual business houses and individual gainers from the economies of the world. He therefore wanted that there should be equitable distribution or equal distribution of the resources of the state. It should not be controlled by individuals. The profits should not be shared by the individuals. Everything should be for the state and for the welfare of the people of that state. That was equal distribution of wealth amongst the people. It was from here that laborers of the world unite concept was considered. Karl Marx has not specifically mentioned in his book Das Kapital about the equal distribution of wealth or resources. The fundamental idea is that the resources of the state should not be utilized for the gain of individuals. It should benefit the society as a whole, and especially the labor class, which spends its toil to create resources and for the progress of the economy of that country. That is where the communist theory, with total controls on the economic system, came into being. But this idea that there should be equal distribution of wealth or equal distribution of resources amongst the people could not achieve the desired results. Therefore, after Karl Marx, it was Lenin who softened the theory to some extent and brought some liberalization in it. The liberalization was to the extent that there should be equitable distribution of wealth, or there should be equitable distribution of resources amongst various sections of society. The profit should not go to the individuals. The profit should be distributed equitably amongst those sections of society who work for the welfare of the state, and the labor should be participatory into sharing the gains of that wealth. Lenin worked on this theory for a number of years to build a strong economy in the then Soviet Union, or you call that USSR, Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. Then came the Second World War, where Stalin controlled the reins of USSR. By that time, the USSR, with its controlled system of economy, has made enough gains, have consolidated their progress in economic field and laid a base for future progress of USSR and its allies and the followers of the Eastern economic system. After Stalin, the USSR economy did not flounder, or rather, after the Second World War, the economy remained little bit stable, while the economies of USA and England and other European countries and American countries, they were shaken by the Second World War. The USSR economy remained little bit stable because of the total controls over the resources of the state. But after the Second World War, there came a time when Mr. Nikita Khrushchev and Brezhnev were at the helms of affairs. The era of Cold War between the Eastern Bloc or so-called Russian Bloc and the American Bloc have started. It was here that the Russians have to spend a lot for competing with the USA in arms race. It was then that the treaties of Seattle and NATO were signed, and the allies expected much more help from the makers of Seattle or NATO. Now, in that arms race, much have to be spent on the production of arms and to beat each other in order to keep his or her supremacy. The Russian bloc or the USSR had to spend considerable part of its wealth and resources for uplifting its arms system and spending more on atomic energy development, missile development and work in the outer space. Therefore, more funds were needed. It was during this period that the Soviet Union had sent its first astronaut Yuri Gagarin in space in 1952. That was also part of the Cold War between the two blocs, the Soviet bloc and the US bloc. It entailed a lot of economic expenditure to keep this race going on, the arms race going on between the two blocs. Therefore, during the Brezhnev period and the Nikita Khrushchev period, the Soviet economy could not progress much. The stability which was earlier there, hitherto there, could not keep its pace. As the Eastern economic system does not allow FDIs, which you call that foreign direct investment in their countries, so much funds could not flow from outside to the Soviet Union for industrialization or for raising the standard of living of the people or the laborers. That led to discontentment amongst the labor class there, and this discontentment was clearly visible in various spheres of life. One was that though at one time Russia was considered number one superpower along with United States, but it could not maintain its stature for a long period because the economy was floundering. They needed more funds to be pumped in for raising their industrial infrastructure, for road and rail infrastructure, and for better wages to the labor class. That could not be that way as foreign direct investment was not forthcoming. It was so as there were lots of constraints in the way of foreign investors to invest in Soviet Union. There was no free flow of information also. There was no free flow of, there were no free channels to discuss various economic systems with the outside world. The investors were afraid of investing in Soviet Union. When such a situation came, it was Mr. Gorbachev who became the secretary of the CPSU. He thought that if the doors of Soviet Union were not open to foreign investors, it will be difficult to revive the economy. Though Soviet Union never admitted of any big recession as had happened in case of USA, but the weakening economy was clearly visible. Therefore, Gorbachev, he gave the slogan of Perestroika and Glasnost. That meant that to open the doors of Soviet economy to foreign investors, invite them to invest more, and open economic system also, communication system also. Earlier there was no freedom of speech there, no freedom of writing. Gorbachev wanted that let us start with the idea of sharing information with other countries. People should be allowed to express their views on different aspects of the political system as well as the economic system and the social system prevalent in USSR. That meant that criticism should be invited and tolerated. Gorbachev was a man of liberal mind and liberal ideas, but the CPSU was critical of his ideas and thinking. His scheme of Perestroika and Glasnost could not progress much. The basic reason was that the FDI which they wanted to bring in could not come into that large number which the Soviet Union expected. The reason was when the Soviet economy was opened for foreigners, for foreign investors, they kept some conditions. First was that if you invest into Soviet Union, you cannot take away the entire profits to your countries. You have to share something with the Soviet people also, or give something in return. The taxation was higher, and there was lot of controls for getting licenses or setting up factories or investing money in different ventures. Therefore, the foreign investors did not come in large numbers, and the Soviet economy started floundering, because after the World War II, Soviet Union had spent lots of money for keeping on the Cold War with the United States of America and manufacturing piles of weapons. It made its weapons arsenal very strong. Missile system was started, and Soviet Union even today has supremacy in arms race as compared to USA in some fields. But the money was not forthcoming. The labor class, there was discontentment in labor class, and the controls on the economic system were loosening, because this Eastern economic system is basically a system of controls, a system where you share everything or the profits with the laborers and other workers. It's a participatory type of economic system. You can't take anything to your home. You can't spend more money on your luxurious items individually, because there is no individual earning as such. There was no individual earning as such during that period, but after that there some liberalization has taken place, and after the exit of Gorbachev had to face lot of criticism in changing the Eastern economic system, but he was not successful. Then came Mr. Vladimir Putin, who is considered as a very strong leader. He did not much believe in the thought process Mikhail Gorbachev. Instead, he is a hardliner, and he chose to retain much of the thoughts of Marx and Lenin, and that way the revival of Soviet economy started. But the large scale spending on the arms manufacturing in Soviet Union had already done much damage to the basic economic infrastructure. The allied states of the USSR, they started grumbling, started questioning the economic measures, and there was disintegration in the Soviet Union. By 1990 and 92, between 90 and 92, the Soviet Union was totally disintegrated, and even the name Soviet Union was replaced by Russia and allied states. USSR stopped to be an entity on the world map, and the different states which broke away from USSR chose different economic systems. Nobody adhered to that thoughts of Karl Marx or Karl Marx or Lenin. After the Soviet Union, the second major country who is still adhering to the original thoughts of Marx and Lenin is China, where the Eastern economic system has worked wonderfully and has bore fruit also. When in 1948 the armies of Mao Zedong marched into China, it brought with it the fundamentals of Marxism and Leninism. But Mao thought and saw that he has to create something different to run the economic system in China. It may be parallel to Karl Marx and Lenin, but it should keep its fundamental thought intact. So Mao Zedong gave a new slogan to China that was leap forward, and the economic system was rejuvenated. Mao very strongly applied the control system on the Chinese economy. It became a closed economy or a closed state where everything worked behind the Iron Curtain. The outside world could not peep into it. The Mao thought was prevalent all around. It was a thought of total controls on the economic system, and it was a thought of control by the party organs on various institutions, and it was a thought process of supremacy of the army, the People's Liberation Army of China. It kept its hegemony over the social system, the economic system, and even the cultural system of China. Mao, who was also known as a helmsman, did everything to propagate his thought of Maoism. Maoism means or meant no criticism, no discussion, no FDIs, or no loosening of control of the state on the economic or cultural system. But during the Mao days, the Chinese economy progressed miraculously. They have always been keeping a double-digit growth rate. The workers flourished. Their salaries have gone up, and Mao also did not allow Western consumerism to enter China. That way, there were lots of savings and not much spending. Another dictum which helped China to achieve its targets of economic growth was manufacture cheap and sell cheap. If today you go to the bazaars of United States or other Western countries or big stores there, big malls there, you will see most of the consumer goods have the tag of made in China. The Chinese dictum is to produce cheap and sell cheap. The Chinese industry or industrial goods have captured the world market. Take the case of India also, where goods manufactured in China are available in plenty, toys made in China are available in plenty, electronic goods made in China are available in plenty, and in almost every big town of India there is a China sale, China market. How they have achieved all this? They have utilized their labor force in a very controlled manner. The labor force there is attuned to manufacturing more and more goods, selling them at cheap rates in the foreign markets and bringing in lots of money. Now, Mao thoughts or Mao system remained prevalent for a number of years in China, but it had its own setbacks also. China, when its economy started shining and flourishing, it started nursing hegemonistic thoughts. Their ambition to usurp the territory of other states was prevalent in their minds. You remember that when Mao was at the helm of affairs and Zhou Enlai was the Prime Minister, China had signed a policy of punch between the two countries. But it was in 1961-62 when China stabbed into the back of India. In the slogan of Hindi Chini Bhai Bhai was given a go-by, and the Chinese armies marched into Nepha sector of our country. Our army units were badly mauled because they came in hordes, very large numbers, simply to prove that this part of India belongs to us. That is still continuing. At the same time, our trade relations, though have improved, but we cannot for a long period have faith in the intentions of Chinese leadership. During the Mao's period, Chinese economy was totally controlled economy. There were no foreign investors, no FDIs, no individual entrepreneurship, no freedom to invest in his or her own way, no freedom to utilize the gains or profits in one's own manner. Everything was in the hands of the state and still is in the hands of the state, with some relaxations. After Mao, when the economic system could not keep pace, it was Deng Xiaoping who took over the reins of the Chinese Communist Party. He thought that without liberalizing the economic system, the development pace of the country could not be kept. Therefore, Deng to a certain extent liberalized the economic system. He invited foreign investors to come into China, but with some conditions. Now you can invest in China in some sectors, but there are lots of conditions to run business there. The controlled economy is still there. The liberalization is to the extent that you can invest there in some sectors. Those sectors are core sectors. Core sectors are all in the hands of the state machinery. The development of economic system in China helped it to make major progress in different fields. See the road infrastructure in China, the rail infrastructure in China, the manufacture of weapons, the development of missile system. It is something to be seen, to be believed. You see, China today stands at number 1 in the development pace, economic development pace rather. It is going to be the economic giant of the world very soon, because everywhere and anywhere, wherever you go, you find the tag of Chinese manufactured goods. Their imports or exports in India have trebled during the last decade. It is not a minor matter. The Chinese progress in development field, in economic field, have hard hit the industrial system, the cottage industry in India. Small investors in India, they have suffered because the Chinese goods are flooding our markets, and the Chinese are reaping the fruits also throughout the world. China is not only going to be a leading country as far as its military might is concerned, it is already known as a dragon, but it is going to prove a economic giant also. Why so? The basic thing is that China had not allowed the energies of its labor to be frittered away. There were no strikes, there are no lockouts, there are no dissent, and the China economy today is action-oriented economy. Now, when Mao Zedong was ruling there, he first brought leap forward. Second was, he thought that the culture of China should not be affected by the Western world. Therefore, he started cultural revolution also. The Red Guards of Mao Zedong spread throughout the country to check the influence of modern consumerism on Chinese society, and thousands of youth were killed in Tiananmen Square to make them to toe the Chinese economic line, the social line and the cultural line. Those controls, though were very harsh, they left a bad impression on the minds of the world community as far as the freedom of expression was concerned. But ultimately, the Chinese feel that it has helped us. Now, those who go to China, they find that labor is not paid very heavily there, but they are paid in such a manner, or they are paid so much that they do not grumble outside. If you compare the Eastern economy as adopted by China with the liberalized system in India, or the socialistic pattern of society thought in India or the mixed economy which was adopted by Mrs. Indira Gandhi, we stand far behind in the development process, because in the Chinese economic system there are no loose points. According to one authentic survey, in the industrial town of Shanghai in China, a laborer can earn up to $1 lakh per year. This is not something small as compared to the Indian laborers, as compared to the laborers elsewhere. The laborers in China are handsomely paid, but there is no consumerism visible in China as such. The people don't live ostentatious lives. They don't run after the Western fashion world or the Western consumerism, which is very much visible in India. So the Chinese economic system is proving efficacious. Now, after Deng Xiaoping, the other leaders have also adopted that system and kept it intact. Now, the present President Xi also practices the same thing. Say the thoughts of Mao, Lenin plus Marx are still intact in the Chinese economic system. That is one reason that Chinese economy is strong also, Chinese economy is resilient also, and Chinese economy is heading forward in every sphere. We in India also tried to adopt some parts of the Eastern economic system after independence. Our first Prime Minister, Mr. Jawaharlal Nehru, was much enamored of the progress of Soviet Union or the socialist system of Soviet Union. It was then that he brought in the idea of socialistic pattern of society and set up bigger industrial units, steel plants like Durgapur, Bhilai, Rourkela, etc., for quicker industrialization of the country and for creating more and more jobs. But our public sector, we neglected the private sector, tried to give a boost to public sector, more investments were made into the public sector, private sector was brought under controls, lots of controls, but that did not help because of the corrupt official machinery. Many good public sector units, they died a slow death. Many of them which are running are today in the red. And the Eastern economic thought of controlled economy could not go much forward. It was after Nehru that Indira Gandhi had to adopt mixed economic system, and from 1992 onwards we have to adopt the liberalized economic system under the stewardship of then Prime Minister P.V. Narasimha Rao and Dr. Manmohan Singh, who was made the finance minister those days. because our economic controls or our encouragement to or investment into the public sector, which did not pay dividends, had forced the country to mortgage its gold also with the World Bank. The Eastern economic system is not bad. Had it been so, why China could have progressed so much? Why North Korea? Why Yugoslavia, Czechoslovakia, Slovakia and all these countries, they have marched ahead. In fact, the economic system left its imprints in our country when the CPM had been capturing power in some states. The Karl Marx ideology was adopted by the Communist Party of India. It was a new system. It worked for some time. The CPI looked up, but ultimately the system, the CPI weakened after the 1961 war. Why so? Because when China attacked India, the CPI was split into two parts. One was the CPI, second became the CPI Marxist, CPI-M. Because one section supported the economic and social systems or the Chinese attack on India, justified it. But the then veteran CPI leader Mr. S.A. Jange, he did not support the action of China. Therefore, the Communist Party split into two. But the hardliners in the Communist Party, they adopted the thought process of Marx, Lenin, etc. And even today, the Communist Party, CPI-M, is ruling in Tripura and Kerala. Sorry, not in Kerala now, earlier in Kerala also. This CPI is ruling in Tripura. It remained into power for almost 24 years in West Bengal. But the system could not evolve as strong as it should have been. Because today the trend is that the communist ideology, the rigorous system, economic system and its implications are not applied by many countries. The communist movement as such is not picking up. It is slowly disintegrating because to boost an economy, you need huge investments. You need to tell your people or the investors that if you invest 1 paisa, you will earn 100 paisa and you can utilize it for your own benefit. That is the liberal economy. Every country now is running towards adopting the Western economic system because of the freedom of investment, because of less controls. Take the case of our country when there were controls on economic investment before 1991, we could not progress much. But after the liberalization of economy system in 1992, India has started looking up. our growth rate, though could not match China's, but at least at one time it has achieved 8%. In our country, the basic problem is that we are experimenting with different systems. There have not been no clear thought what to adopt, how to adopt, where to adopt. That is where the economy of the country has been floundering. We invited foreign investments. Now we are bearing the fruits also, they are bearing the fruits also. As far as the infrastructure, industrial infrastructure, rail infrastructure, road infrastructure, even arms infrastructure is concerned, we have progressed a lot, because more funds are available to us. In the Eastern economic system, if you want to progress, one thing is very clear, that when you apply controls over an economy, you have to ensure that the profits are not frittered away. The profits are reinvested into raising infrastructure. In our country, when the communist regimes tried, as in West Bengal or in Kerala also, or in Tripura also, that some parts of the Eastern economic system, some fundamentals of Eastern economic system should be applied or adopted, where we failed. We failed that the profits which we gained, we allowed that to be frittered away. Those profits were not invested for raising better infrastructure, for bettering the lot of the people, or for providing more employment opportunities to the people. That is where in West Bengal, where the CPM ruled for more than 24 years, could not stand the test of the ground realities. They were overthrown by Mamata Banerjee. So, the Eastern economic system is a very efficient system, provided it is applied the way it has been applied in China, provided its real spirit is understood. The real spirit is participation of everybody, or participation of the labor class in the economic system, and sharing the profits with everybody. Now in China, there is no big hiatus between the poor and the rich as compared to India. In our country, 8 or 10 families are controlling the economy of the country. They are the big investors, they are the big profiteers, while the poverty is on the increase. But in Eastern economic system, of course, poverty is there, of course, unemployment is there, but it is not as much as it is visible in our country. We have not been able to bridge the gap between the rich and the poor so far. But in China, you see, many people cannot boast of riches or big wealth, but they can boast of good quality of life. which is available to them. So the Eastern economic system has its own benefits, where it is applied with the fundamental principle of earning profits and then reinvesting it for the welfare of society or for the welfare of the people or for raising infrastructure of the country, industrial infrastructure, social, cultural and educational infrastructure, and in the field of health also. This is all I have to say today.
With this note, thank you, sir. Thank you so very much for explaining us in detail the Eastern Economic Theory of Development Communication. But if we talk about in context of India, what is your say on this? Till where have we reached, or what else we can predict to have in the near future?
You see, what we need is basically to, number one, to implement the policies in a sincere manner. Number two, to eradicate corruption, which has eaten the very vitals of our economy. Till you remove corruption and bring in efficiency, no country can progress, no economic system can progress. Every economic system is good, but the application of the system is more important. In our country, we are after sloganeering. We can show big dreams to the society, but when it comes to the implementation stage, we lag behind. That is where our economy has not looked up so far. China has always maintained double-digit progress every year, growth, double-digit growth every year for the last over 2 decades. Why not in India? Because the system is not efficient. We require to develop a system which is lacking in this country.
With this note, thank you, sir. Thank you so very much. And I would like to tell all the viewers and the students who might be watching us right now or would be accessing us through YouTube that Shri K.G. Dutt would be again with us next Friday, and we would be discussing on Gandhian theory of the development communication. Thank you, sir.